Start that. There we go. Good to go.
Okay, thank you. Like I said, we'll go ahead and get started, and if other council members want to join in when they are able to, we'll welcome them. But we'll go ahead and since it's after 4, we'll go ahead and get started with the Community Planning and Transportation Committee meeting for the month of October. We have 4 items on the agenda. The first item is the same item that it always is every month, just for those that are interested or haven't joined us before. In this committee meeting every month, we get an update and discuss the ridership reports of our public transit system. We've been doing this long before the city took over the system, but especially since we did take it over, it's been of even more interest, I think, to everyone on city staff, of course, and the council, since we're now the ones responsible for it. So anybody, any constituents, friends, family, they're ever interested in the data, information, questions, anything about our public transit system, this committee meeting and this number 1 agenda item is a great opportunity to direct people to for that type of thing. So I encourage everyone to attend this meeting online or watch it on YouTube or send us questions, and we will try to get all those things answered or discussed. So item number 1 is Public Transit Ridership Report for the month of September and Transit Ridership Fares. We have staff here to give us a presentation.
Councilmember, I'll just introduce our team here. Taylor Johnson is going to do the heavy lifting as always for us. But I want to mention we also have Marilyn Dillon with us from Embark if you have any direct questions for them. And also James Gomez from Nelson Nygaard. And Taylor will speak to just a quick update of our long-range planning effort that James and his team are doing for us. So I'll hand off to Taylor if I may.
Yes, thank you, Sean. And I think Michael Scroggins, our other Embark counterpart, is here too. His name was just MS iPhone, so I think he snuck in here, but I want to mention that he's here as well. Hope everybody can hear me okay. I just want to provide some highlights over this performance report. I want to say we're very excited about the report that's in your packet today. It is a little different, council members. If you have been on this committee for a while, as Councilmember Holman noted, we've been doing this report for many years. And this is probably one of the major changes we've made in a while to the report. With the help of Embark, it has a lot more information in it for you all and provides a good narrative explaining a lot of the metrics. So I'll go through and highlight a few of the numbers, but I invite you all to review the report in its entirety when you have time, if you haven't had time already, and please feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. So total fixed route weekday ridership for September 2020 was, let me get my notes here, was 17,528, and the weekday average daily was 783. And a new metric that we're going to start talking more about, the ridership per service hour, or in your packet or in your performance report is RPSH, was 5.92 for weekday fixed route ridership. So that simply means that there was about 6 people per service hour that used the fixed route system over the entire weekday service for the month of September. For Saturday fixed route ridership in September, we had just over 1,094, and the average daily was 274, with the ridership per service hour at 7.7. So I just want to make an interesting note that our ridership per service hour is actually slightly higher, almost 2 per service hour, 2 riders per service hour more than the weekday, which is good to see since we just added that service in August. For paratransit, the total weekday ridership was 1,393, and the average daily was 66, with the ridership per service hour at 0.64. And then for Saturday paratransit ridership was a total of 57, and the average daily was 14 with the ridership per service hour of 1.04. Again, that's just a few of the highlights I wanted to mention out of the performance report. There's a lot more numbers in that, but I wanted to make sure that you all had time to kind of read through it in its entirety and digest it. But I'm happy to answer any questions if you have on the performance report before I give a long-range plan update.
Well, I do appreciate that information because, people do, we see comments, people ask questions about, well, I don't, see anybody on there sometimes or whatever. But I think we can show anybody that's ever interested, we can tell you exactly how many people are riding the bus. And there may not be a whole lot of people riding it all at the same time, all at once, at the same time of day. But throughout the day and throughout the week, a lot of people do ride it. And I think these numbers show that. And so anyway, is there any questions from council members that are with us today? Okay. Don't see any. Okay, thank you, Taylor. Proceed.
Thank you, sir. And just as a reminder, we're still living in our COVID era with the transit ridership is still dipped. So the numbers would be higher in normal circumstances. On that first page, just for example, the fixed route ridership is about 43% down from last September. So just want to make that caveat that the ridership per service hour would be significantly more if we were looking at this a year from now or a year before. Going on to the long range plan update, at the end of your agenda item 1, we have a 1-pager in there for you. That was prepared by Nelson Nygaard, our consultant firm that's helping us with our long range planning activity for this year. And it just gives council a brief overview of information that's what the study is about and upcoming outreach activities. So that way, if you have any questions from residents, you'll be able to kind of point them to this information and to this website that we're working to get online that people can access. And hopefully in the next next week or so, we'll have a survey for the community. And I just want to mention that we are planning our major first round of outreach activities for the month of November. So those dates are November 12th for virtual public meetings, and also November 13th for virtual stakeholder meetings. And we're very excited to start really reaching out to the community and getting feedback. But once we have real solid information on times and how to access those, we will send those out to council and make sure, and to the public, and make sure that you all have that information. But on the long range planning activity.
Any questions from council members about the long range public transit plan? I don't see any. Okay. Councilmember Carter. Yeah.
One of the topics we discussed in our retreat last weekend was a need for a bus stop by the county jail. The folks at the jail have said that about 10 to 20% of the folks they release are ones that are homeless or near that state and in need of services. And if we were to have a bus stop and a once a day stop, they would coordinate with us to release prior to that. So these folks, since the jail's now on the far north side of town, it's become an issue. Have you had any thoughts or discussions about adjusting routes, or is that what this process you're talking about is going to consider?
Yes, sir. Whenever this new facility opened, it is quite a ways from our existing bus routes. So we weren't able to necessarily make a change even when I was at the university. But to the last thing you said, this process is what will inform changes like those, and will really lay out in a strategic way how we accommodate places in Norman that don't have service and that need it, and how we can do that fiscally and responsibly. James, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, the only thing that I would add is last week we met with bus operators, and this week we also met with maintenance staff to also give them an opportunity to share their thoughts and opinions on current service. And we heard from the operators as well that there is a need for service to the Beggs Detention Center. We also heard that they have received requests for service to Norman Tech as well as Johnson Control. So Franklin Road is definitely on our radar and something that we will be looking at as we start to come up with service concepts over the next several months.
Well, I'm very excited to hear that. I think our homeless community and those on the margins, don't frequently show up for meetings or fill out surveys and those kind of things. So I think that even if there's not a lot of community chatter about that during this process, it's a real need. And again, I like you have heard from the VOTEC and Johnson, of the need for that. And Council Member Holman brought up a good point when we were considering, prioritizing projects, infrastructure projects, a bus stop at those locations. We're trying not to do infrastructure projects that increase the operating expenses, but am looking forward to your data and what you find and the feasibility of this, because I do think with so many services on that side of town, it's something we need to look at. So thank you so much.
Yes, sir. And to that point about some populations may not be able to provide feedback, we're going to do our best to get that feedback, but that's also why we're doing the stakeholder discussion. So agencies that interact with clients that may need the service, they'll be able to speak to some of that. And we've included contacts from the detention facility as well as more Norman Tech and some other facilities around town. So we have a pretty comprehensive stakeholder list.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would just get on back of that a little bit too. And even if it's just what we kind of had discussed in our meeting was about, even if it was just a one time per day where it was scheduled with the county jail, that this is when the bus is going to be coming, and this is when it'll take you back downtown. Something like that, I think, would be very valuable, even if we can't get a full-on, route going there yet. But I am very excited that we are looking at that as part of the long-range plan, because we've all definitely gotten requests about more Norman and really just North Norman, Northeast Norman, and Southeast Norman too is another area I've gotten messages about over the years and things. So I'm very excited about this developing a new long-range plan for our public transit system. Any other comments questions from council? All right. Anything else, Taylor?
I don't think so. Thank you, sir.
Okay. With that, I would just, like I said, if we have, just continue working on things like bus stops. I know we don't want to put anything too permanent in, but things like benches and shelters, or bus stops that don't have anything at all. More specifically, I should say, if they don't have a bench or they don't have a shelter at all, getting something there that could be temporary, perhaps. But that's always been a big priority. And for council members and citizens watching, this again is this agenda item is an opportunity for us to ask these questions, to make recommendations. If you've seen a bus stop where people are sitting on the curb all the time with groceries and stuff, let us know, and we can see what we can do to at least provide something there. So it's one of my favorite topics to continue talking about every month. And so with that, I think we can move on to the second item on the agenda, which is a discussion regarding, and thank you, Taylor and Sean. And so item number 2 is a discussion regarding the rural road safety audit. We have some staff information on that.
Thank you, Councilor. I'm going to hand off to David Riesland here in a moment. Just want to mention this is a follow-up from our February meeting with this committee. maybe for more the benefit of Councilmember Nash, last year, Councilmember Wilson asked for a discussion about, I think the topic was stop signs and pavement striping is really what it sort of started out to be. And so we did a pretty nice discussion and evaluation of that, particularly in the rural East Norman area. And the basic takeaway of that was that our roads, our streets in Norman are remarkably safe. We have a very, very low number of accidents collectively, including in East Norman and including in some of those areas that there might be an accident here and there. And, you know, the sort of the gut reaction is, hey, let's go out and put up another stop sign or do some pavement markings. But in fact, that isn't really what we find to be the best remedy. And from that, we identified 4 corridors in East Norman that tend to have a little higher accident experience. And we suggested the council to go back and do a road safety audit. So that's what David's going to lay out for you here, the road safety audit that he and the staff have done in these corridors. And I hope it gives you kind of a picture of the things that we can do, the things that might cause accidents or unsafe conditions that are a little less intuitive. So I'll hand off to David. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Sean. I will attempt to share my screen. It was screen 2, I believe. No, it was screen 1. Oh, we had that figured out. There it is. Okay, did everybody see that?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I will go into slideshow so it's a little bit bigger for you. As Sean said, this is a presentation on rural road safety audits that we conducted relatively recently. It again came out of that February 27th presentation. The 4 corridors that were kind of rose to the top when we were looking at accident rates of all the roads in rural East Norman. Cedar Lane Road between a half mile east of 48th Avenue Southeast and a half mile east of 60th Southeast was the first one. The second one was 60th Avenue Southeast between a half mile north of State Highway 9 and a half mile north of Lindsay. The third one was, honestly, it was the only one that wasn't a mile long, but it was 120th Avenue between Alameda Drive and a half mile south of Rock Creek Road. And then the last one was 156th Avenue Northeast between a half mile north of Rock Creek and a half mile north of Tecumseh. And you pick those half mile points so you get the key intersection within that mile. So you can kind of look and see that what they might have been. What is a road safety audit? It's a little different way of looking at a particular stretch of roadway than we might do otherwise. It involves more than one person. It's a multidisciplinary team that goes out and looks at it. We gather all the collision reports beforehand and kind of try to see what's going on, what kind of collisions are happening. Are there people that are mistaken a two-way stop for a four-way stop? Are there reasons why people are running off the road? Things like that. But the basic elements that you want to consider, you want to try to answer 2 questions. You want to ask yourself what elements of the road may present a safety concern, to what extent, to which users, and under what circumstances. And then second, what opportunities exist to eliminate or mitigate identified safety concerns. So our first location was Cedar Lane Road. The first thing that you want to look at again is the collisions. We pulled the collision information from January 1st of 2018 to the time the road safety audit was conducted. There were 10 collisions that occurred during that time period. 6 of the collisions were actually at the intersection of 60th and Cedar Lane, and all were related to one or more motorists claiming that they were not able to see adequately. So that kind of leads to things like, okay, is vegetation growing up? Is there a fence? Is there a barn right there that might be blocking their sight distance? Is there something else that maybe we can take care of? But more interestingly, at least to me, 2 of the collisions were run off the road collisions along Cedar Lane Road west of 60th Avenue. So you don't usually see collisions like that. You see more of the intersection type collisions, but that was something that we really wanted to focus in on. So the audit was conducted on September 25th. The basic things that you look for in an audit, you look at things like the condition of the road. Are the lanes delineated, or are they smooth? What kind of signs are out there? What, if any, kind of delineation is provided? If there's an intersection in between, like the picture on the right side of the screen, 60th and Cedar Lane is the main intersection in that mile of roadway. Is there illumination of that roadway that would help nighttime collisions? And then we want to look at speeds that are occurring out there. So some of the issues that we identified, we did a speed study and found that 19% of drivers travel through the area at speeds higher than 60 miles per hour or higher. That's kind of alarming because you got a 50-mile-per-hour posted speed. One of the things that we noticed is that the object markers that were around a major drainage culvert to the west of the 60th and Cedar Lane intersection, they were not all there. So that was one of the recommendations we were going to make, was to make sure that they're posted on all corners, that they're all in good shape. Vegetation removal, very helpful for those collisions that occurred at 60th and Cedar Lane. 3 of the 4 corners really needed to be treated, whether it was mowing or whether it was cutting down small trees or bushes or what it might be. But make so people can pull up to the stop or advance to where they're a point where they're not in the intersection and see what may be coming. Pavement drop-offs were a big concern on Cedar Lane Road. If you can look at the picture on the right, that's the drainage structure that I'm talking about with the object markers, but you can also see that there's very tall grass along the side of the road. If you're traveling along the road and you see that tall grass, that grass is covering up the fact that there is a drop-off there. So that's a very dangerous situation. And the people that ran off the road did strike objects within the clear zone. So that's something else that needs to be addressed. The guardrail that was protecting that drainage structure appeared to be very substandard, something that needed to be addressed. So as we develop these or look at all these different items, we develop an action plan for what we're going to do to address some of the problems that are occurring. Number one thing out there was speeding. We sent a copy of the speed study to Norman Police Department so that they would be aware and could schedule enforcement of the posted speed limit. That part has been done. Upgrading the object markers around the drainage structure and making sure that there's all that there should be there. That assignment was written. It's been done. The signs have been upgraded and installed. The vegetation removal, Streets was notified of this particular issue. They are in the process of scheduling it, but to my knowledge, it's not been done yet. The same with the pavement drop-offs. If Streets resurfaces a road, you'll often see that they come in and build up a shoulder and put down some sod to make sure that erosion doesn't become a problem. That's not been done on Cedar Lane. That's the kind of thing that we're asking for them to do, is to come and build up that earthen shoulder so somebody has a safe area to, if they do have to exit the roadway, they can maybe get back on without causing harm to themselves. And then the guardrail that needs to be addressed. I think I've got a picture later on that shows that the one segment of the guardrail is almost touching the pavement. Well, I guess I don't. We'll move on to the second location, 120th Avenue. 4 collisions occurred since January 1st of 2018. 3 were at the intersection involving vehicles that said they were not able to see. So the same sort of thing, vegetative clearing probably is needed there. And then the 4th collision really didn't play into anything along the road. It was a person who I think was in a little bit of a hurry, and they wanted to pass a slow moving vehicle that was either pulling a trailer or a boat. And when they pulled out to pass, they realized there was somebody else coming. They tried to get back in and flip the back of the boat or the back of the trailer. We conducted this particular audit on September 28th. Again, we looked at road and lane conditions, traffic control signs, delineation, and speed study. Just over 5.65% of drivers traveling through the area are at speeds higher than 60 miles per hour. That's concerning, but it doesn't raise to the level of concern where PD would normally consider posting an officer there to check for speeds. It's just not enough cars to make that really kind of worth their while. Pavement drop-offs, there were some, even though the collisions didn't suggest this was a problem, there were a number of locations where there were concerns that there was, substantial drop-off, and thought that could be addressed, should be addressed to hopefully ward off any future collisions that might occur. Safety clear zone can be a problem if you have fixed objects where somebody leaves the roadway and has a chance to strike something before they can get back on the roadway. There were some small trees that were noticed in the clear zone just north of Alameda on the east side of the street. There was a large drainage structure on the west side of the street. It was very out of place from other drainage structures under driveways. Most of the driveways are treated with a culvert or a tin horn underneath. This one was a concrete box under this driveway, and it had very large head walls that could be struck by anyone who left the roadway. So we thought, that should really be protected with some object markers. And then there's a large arrow sign that exists at the very south end of this study area because 120th dead ends at Alameda. So there's a double arrow sign telling you that you either need to turn left or right. Well, this particular sign was not really where it should have been. It was fairly far to the left, so we were going to recommend something about that. And then the vegetative clearing that was needed on the northeast and northwest corners of the Alameda Drive intersections. So again, hopefully give those motorists a chance to see what's coming. Oh, and I will tell you that I didn't talk about it at Cedar Lane, but this is the picture on the right is a luminaire at the intersection, so it is there. There is one at 60th and Cedar Lane as well. So the action plan for location 2, speeding, because it was such a small percentage, we didn't feel that there was any action required there. In terms of the pavement drop-offs, Streets was notified of that and asked to build up those shoulders, kind of like they had at Cedar Lane. That's in progress. Vegetation removal, the same thing, it's in progress. The object markers around this large concrete drainage structure, that ticket was written for our crews to address, and they have completed that. As well, our crews have completed the relocation of the large arrow sign at the Alameda Drive intersection. In fact, that picture on the right is the crews installing the object marker signs at this drainage structure. Location 6 is 60th Avenue. 6 collisions occurred there since January 1st of 2018. 5 were at the intersection of 60th and Lindsay Street. And again, multiple instances of at least one motorist reporting not being able to see properly. There is one fatality in this corridor, and that's probably why this one became an issue. However, when you look at the accident report for this particular collision, it involved excessive speed and reckless driving on the part of the driver. It was single vehicle, ran off the road, hit a very large tree. The driver and the occupant who was in the vehicle with him were killed. But honestly, I didn't see anything out there that would have prevented this collision. We did the audit on September 30th. Again, looked at those same sorts of things as well as trying to figure out, was there something out there that might have prevented this fatal collision? Speeding, here only 1.15% of drivers were traveling at speeds higher than 60 miles per hour. Pavement drop-offs, they did exist, but they were only in two very, very small areas. We did find one pothole on the north end of the mile. We did see some, not that vegetative clearing was needed necessarily when we were out there on September 30th, but we know that this location that's a common thing that we hear, is that people can't see and that it needs to be cleared. So that's something that needs to be addressed. Interestingly, at this intersection, if you looked at Google Earth, there used to be a luminaire here, and apparently during some storm cleanup, OG&E replaced some poles and did not put the luminaire back. So that's one thing that we were going to address as well. And again, that fatal collision, we don't think was the result of anything on the road. picture on the right is that pothole that we saw on the center line. So the action plan, we didn't think there was anything required for the speeding. Streets was notified about the pavement drop-offs and asked to build up those shoulders in those two small areas. This picture on the right is one of the areas just off the east side of the road, north of Lindsay Street. Streets was also notified about the pothole and about the need to stay on top of the vegetation removal at the intersection of 60th and Lindsay Street. I did notify OG&E and was told that they would get that replaced for us so that we can have illumination there again. And in terms of the fatal collision, we didn't think any action was required. The last location, 156th, 2 collisions occurred since January 1st, 2018. Both collisions were on 156th south of Tecumseh Road. If you're familiar with that area, there is an S-curve between Tecumseh Road and the first road to the south. I'm drawing a blank on what the name of that road is right now. One of the 2 collisions was excessive speed through that S-curve, so maybe there's some signing that could be addressed with that. But the other was is actually a single southbound motorist that struck a black cow in the dark. So I'm not sure anything would have helped that. The audit was conducted on October 1st, and again we looked at those same series of items. Here we did find that 22.08% of drivers travel at a speed in excess of 60 miles per hour. Found a lot of pavement drop-offs that needed to be corrected, and we found a winding road sign that was in dire need of being replaced. So in terms of speeding, because there was such an issue, we did forward the copy of the speed study to Norman Police for enforcement. That's been done. Streets was notified about the pavement drop-offs to make those necessary corrections. As far as I know, that's in progress. And then the kind of the funny looking picture to the right is the new winding road sign that our guys put up for southbound traffic on 156th. So that part has been done as well. And that's all I have.
Okay,
Any
thank
questions?
you for that presentation. I appreciate that. Are there any questions, comments from council members on this item? Councilmember Nash?
Yeah. Let's see, how many vehicles roughly per hour were going down 120th during the, I guess, during
Sure.
daytime hours? Looks like most of the accidents look like they occurred between 7 a.m. and 8 p.m.
Yes. Yeah, there were no nighttime collisions there.
Right.
I will tell you, it carries enough traffic to warrant the installation of striping. So it carries more than 1,000 vehicles per day. I don't have that number in front of me right now to tell you exactly what that is. I can certainly research that and we can send that back through.
All right. Because I saw it was like 5.65% vehicles are traveling above 60 miles per hour.
Yes.
And that's not enough to convince Norman PD to hang out there a little bit, because they wouldn't have to
has
hang
not
out
been
more
in
than
the
30
past.
minutes before a car would speed by and get a ticket.
I can certainly send the speed study to Norman Police Department for their assistance, if that's what you'd like me to do.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how impatient they get, but hanging out for 25 minutes to get a handle on this problem of excessive speed out there on the rural roads. Yeah, it seems like it might be worth it. How many how many crews do you have out there on vegetation removal? Because I know that's a tremendous problem out there, and I get complaints almost on a daily basis about stop signs. They'll be visible within about 20 to 30 feet, but 100 feet might not be able to see the intersection.
It's a challenge.
Well, I know
for
that
council. I can't, it's a challenge for us, Councilmember. We have so limited staff and so many miles to mow. Frankly, we're always behind, just mowing the rights of way, let alone the intersections. And so it's a challenge. We are pretty reactive, frankly, to many of these. We know the locations that are the most concerning. We try to hit those, but we tend to fall behind. I literally have probably a total staff of 5 or 6 mowers in the entire city, covering about 800 miles of roads. So we need more staff, that's for sure.
So how much does that cost per crew?
Don't think I have that handy. We're happy to get that for you. But we're down, right, because of the hiring freeze, we're down 13 staff today. So it's not, I just need the budgeted staff that would help us to get things done, let alone getting new staff.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a timeline on when those items in progress might be done?
I don't know that David or I do. Happy to get that for you. Again, it's something that our street division would set as a priority once it's been identified as a safety concern. I'm guessing it's within a week or two, but I'll follow up with you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, comments, council? I can't see everybody. So, okay. Yeah, I was.
Councilmember Carter.
Councilmember Carter, okay, yeah.
Councilmember Carter, do you have any?
This might be for Mr. Pyle. I know in this weekend, you made mention of light at the end of the tunnel with our current hiring freeze and the possibility of beginning to fill, just like Mr. O'Leary said, the challenge that city staff has had with this hiring of freeze and prioritizing of essential workers. Any thoughts on that you could share?
I don't see him with us anymore, Councilor. Let me reach out to him. You might have gotten called away.
Okay, no worries.
Okay. Yeah, I'd be interested in, maybe these conversations have already been going on, but if there's anything the county could help us out with on these rural situations, either with, they have equipment and stuff they can use. Maybe we have it too and we don't need them, but that might be one way to help, perhaps, if they're interested. I would agree, Sean, the mowing thing is a real problem. And years ago, the state made the city take over mowing Highway 9. And that was a significant expense. One that I really disagree with. I feel like it's a state highway. The city should not be forced to maintain it just so the state could cut budgets as though we could afford it. So that continues to be a problem, and especially in a city, I'm always reminding people that 200 square miles is extremely unique for a city of our population. There's no other city in the whole United States that is our population that's this size land area that I'm aware of. And any cities that do have our land area are always much larger in population. As I've used the example before, Norman and Tulsa are the same size in land area, just about. And Tulsa has 400,000 people. So it's difficult for a city like Norman to maintain all of these hundreds of miles of roads that we have in Norman with the population and tax base that we have. But I also think it really highlights another issue that we've talked a lot about recently, and that is staffing levels. Every single department in the city, as far as I know, needs more staff. Public Works, 13, I heard Sean correctly, that's 13 for the whole Public Works department, or is that just for
Correct, sir. We've got 125 in total, so about 10% are vacancies right now. And that would be in fleet and streets and stormwater and you name it.
So, it kind of just highlights that every department in our city needs more people, more resources. And a lot of our departments provide public safety services in different ways that are very important. Not being able to keep up with mowing is a public safety problem, especially as we can see on these rural roads, which we have, again, hundreds of miles of. And not being able to keep up with all that creates safety problems, as we can see in these accident and sometimes fatality numbers. So I just, encourage everyone to keep that in mind as we go forward with budgets, that every department needs more people and more resources. Any other comments, questions from council on this agenda item? Don't see any. Okay. I would add a follow-up to this kind of, maybe if you could, because we did, Councilor Wilson, and just so Councilor Nash can be informed of it too, but kind of in this same discussion last year, we had talked about 36th Avenue and Cedar Lane. We do have a bond approved project to address that long term, but Councilmember Wilson had asked about, four-way stops and things like that at that intersection. If you might give a update for Councilmember Nash about that.
I'd be happy to. And again, David has done a number. I think we've done probably a traffic safety analysis of the intersection every other year for the last few years. And it certainly is a location that is generating more accidents than some, but certainly not enough to generate an all-way stop yet, according to our traffic code. So, but again, it's a very unique intersection. Those of you who are familiar with it, if you feel like you're down in a hole, there's literally a 20-foot elevation drop within about a quarter mile. So it just feels very uncomfortable. I understand that very well. So that intersection and that corridor on Cedar Lane Road, as Councilmember Holman has indicated, is a top priority for our 2019 bond program. And in fact, this week we are submitting, in fact, tomorrow, David and his team are submitting those grant applications to ACOG for federal funding match of projects like that. And we're hoping that that project does well, but frankly, the point total for it is not as high as we had hoped. So we're hoping to bring you back some better news when those selections are made here in the next month or two. But effectively, it is about a $8 or $9 million project to improve the entire corridor along Cedar Lane Road and a portion of 36th Avenue, and literally raise the intersection somewhere between 15 and 20 vertical feet. Literally fill the intersection, dirt fill the intersection, and raise the roads up to where they need to be safer, as well as roadside safety and other improvements. And Scott Sturz and his team are working on that design. If everything comes together, that is a project that would happen, I think, Scott can correct me, but I think it's 2023 or 2024 if all the funding comes together.
Okay. I don't know if Councilmember Nash, you have any questions or anything about that particular project you wanted to ask while we're here? Yeah, go ahead.
I was under the impression that that project is going to be started a little earlier, but that intersection's been kind of a problem for a while. That it's got a pinch point going east, and then then it does feel like you described it, being in a hole. But glad that's actually moving forward.
And again, Councilor, it will be dependent upon that federal funding. That's one of those projects that was a mix of local bond funds and federal funds. Not uncommon to be a 70-30 mix on a rural road type like that. So, we're looking at $6 or $7 million in federal funds that we would need. And if that funding isn't authorized by ACOG, that project will begin to slip. And that might be a time for us to look at alternatives to whether it's just at the intersection or other alternatives to try to extend, improve the safety like David showed tonight with the road safety audit before we can actually do the multi-million-dollar improvement.
Does Norman own the land on the northwest corner?
I don't think we own anything there at the intersection. We do own Saxon Park north of there. And there is another project in that bond program to improve 36th Avenue from Cedar Lane Road back to Highway 9. So two different projects in the same bond package. We laid out exactly the schedule that we were hoping to meet on each of those. Scott can probably speak to the schedule for 36th Avenue, but the theory is that both 36 and Cedar Lane would be improved to urban standards. That's also the sort of the north end of what could be one of our largest development projects in Norman called Destin Landing. And that subdivision has yet to kick off. The developer really isn't moving very quickly, but it is a 800-acre development. It's probably the largest thing we've ever seen at one time. And if that development begins, there'll be a much greater need and urgency to get those road improvements in place.
Okay, thank you for that update. I think I've gotten questions about that many times about that intersection. Many of us have, but we are continuing to work on it. And I would definitely, as soon as we do know something about the status of federal funding, might come back and do one of these audits on that. And make some decisions maybe then about some short-term solutions. I also would add maybe for a follow-up, there's actually two urban intersections that I want to, on the same topic of the rural ones, there's a couple urban ones too that people have asked about. Staff is extremely familiar with George and Stinson, of course. There is a new restaurant, sit-down restaurant that is going in where the service station used to, or the gas station that was on the corner used to be. And so I continue to have people that are concerned about that intersection, it being a two-way stop, of course, and people appear to speed down Stinson a lot. We've done the studies on it before over the years, but I might want to do another follow-up on that. Because especially every year we get a new round of parents at Madison, and they start to experience that situation in the afternoon or the morning, and start reaching out about what can we do. And so that one, and then week, 2 weeks ago, I was contacted by the SGA at OU about Elm and Hoover being a two-way intersection. I guess there was a pretty significant accident there a couple weeks ago that knocked out power in the whole block and for several blocks around. And so they reached out about requesting that we take a look at that intersection as well. So thought since the rural intersections issue was on here, that might be a good opportunity to bring those two urban intersections up as well. And just for everybody, there's intersections all throughout, again, our 200 square mile city that can have issues. So if you are experiencing those problems, let your council member know, and we can ask staff to take a look, and maybe they already have. So, okay, maybe we could follow up on that one next time.
Consider done, Councilor.
Thank you. Anything else, comments, questions on this topic from council? I don't see anybody else. Okay. All right. Councilor Carter, do you have something?
Well, just to add, I guess, if we're just bringing up urban intersections, I've had a couple people since I've been back ask me to bring to our attention Berry and Inhofe and Poplar and Imhoff, because apparently people are cutting down Poplar during game day traffic particularly and speeding through that neighborhood. So I'm still getting a little organized. I'll send you an email about that, Sean, and follow up on that. I know we're going to have a Ward 2 meeting on Monday, or so maybe just to get a little feedback. I know it's short notice, so
Sure.
you guys are overworked, and I get it. So anyway, but so anyway, just letting you know.
Thank you.
That'll be coming. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, Councilor Carter, and thank you, staff. All right, so item number 3, we'll go ahead and move on to that one, is a discussion regarding placing street furniture, a bench on Porter Avenue. I believe this is a request from Councilmember Foreman. I don't see her on the line, but I'm sort of familiar with it, a request from a citizen in Ward 6, from what I understand, to place a bench somewhere between Robinson and Rock Creek Road, if I understand the request correctly, but staff may have something to show us about that.
You bet, Councilor. And Scott Sturks is going to take you through kind of a fun tour of what street furniture looks like and where we do it and where we don't do it. And not to make it more difficult on what seems to be a simple thing, why can't you just go out and put up a bench? I understand that. But before we jump into putting out street furniture all throughout Norman, we wanted to just visit with you a bit about that as a policy matter. We've never done it. Most cities don't do it for various reasons. Probably most citizens don't ask for it. But now that we're in the street furniture business on major corridor projects like Main Street and Lindsay Street and soon to be Porter Corridor, I think citizens are seeing more of that and they're thinking, well, why can't you just go out here? And we certainly can. As Scott will share with you, we can buy benches and place a lot of concrete, but is that really where you want to put your resources? That's really the question. And when you do something like that, you've got to maintain it, and you've got to pick up the trash, and you've got to make it ADA accessible, and so on. So we're not trying to make this more difficult than it appears, but we did want to get your guidance before we launch into a larger street furniture program than we're currently set up to do. So I'll let Scott take you from there.
All right, thank you very much. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that I can take you through the slide presentation. A lot of information here. I'm going to try to go through it fairly quickly. Like Sean said, we should kind of want to start off and talk about what is street furniture, because it is something that a lot of people know what it is, but they're not real certain they know exactly what it is. So when we talk about street furniture, it's a term that we use to describe amenities in the public right-of-way, adding functionality and vitality to the pedestrian realm. And I think that says a lot in a really complicated way, but when you think about it, it's things we do to make that entire pedestrian atmosphere, that entire corridor, have a place, placemaking, walkability. And when you think about street furniture, the first things you think about are benches and trash cans, but it also includes things like banners, bike racks, public art, which is something a lot of people don't think of as street furniture, transit shelters, trash cans, lighting and landscaping. A lot of people don't include landscaping in there, but a lot of people do. So there's a lot of things that really go into it, and I just want to show you some of those examples and some of the ways that we've utilized it. But when we're also talking about street furniture, you usually see it most typically used in highly urbanized areas where there's lots of pedestrian traffic, lots of movement, lots going on. Downtown areas, big cities and their center city areas. So you see in a lot of different areas like that. Shopping districts, you may have a shopping district that they've tried to make separate and distinct too. Also, you see it in typical areas where the building lines are close to the property lines in the front instead of being set back off of that street, so that it feels very close and it feels like it really gives it a place and a purpose as you go forward. And this is just a couple of examples just to help us kind of see this and kind of get a little feel for it. So usually you see it between that roadway and what we consider the pedestrian walkway, or in these two diagrams here, what they're calling the throughway. So if you start on the left, you see that extension zone, which is kind of a parking zone. Then that edge zone, which kind of is that separation into when you start getting to the street area or the sidewalk area. Then that furnishing zone. And I think it's interesting in these photos, these diagrams, they actually show that furnishing zone with those tree wells and the landscaping. And then you have that throughway or pedestrian walkway, and then the frontage zone. And this frontage zone is usually left that way for the swing of doors to open so that people aren't getting hit by doors. It's typically where you'll see the little cafe sidewalk look, where a small eatery or coffee shop will put out a couple small cafe tables in that area. So that's still street furniture, but maybe not in the way that we would use it as a city, as a municipality. So as I said earlier, street furniture, you select it carefully. You're using it to help with placemaking, to give it a particular feel. You're trying to meet a theme. You're trying to get a place, give people a sense of a place. These are just some examples of just seating. And you can see it goes from a very simple wood bench to more ornate and elaborate wood benches, very ornate concrete benches. And these are just a few of the bench examples. I found some that look much more like art and sculpture than this. We have used a lot of street furniture in the city of Norman, and we're set up to use more of it. And it is something that we consider. In our City form-based code, we actually left room and spaces for an idea of street furniture. What you see here is just a drawing of our typical street and what it would look like. Or what we have it planned as. And you can see that we have our traffic area, the walkway, and then we have our parking area, and then we have what we're calling the tree lawn. And on the left of this, that's all grass. On the right side, you can see where there's possibly some pavers and some tree wells and landscaping. Then we get into that clear sidewalk, and then what we call the dooryard, which is the same as that frontage on the other diagram that we showed. So as we're doing Center City, the form-based code, we were already considering this and making place for it so that it would be acceptable and adopted and easy to put in. Another place where we've used a lot of street furniture, and I think we've used it very well, is on Main Street. The first project on Main Street in our downtown area was in the mid-2000s, and it was from the railroad to Porter Avenue. And then we came through just a couple of years ago in 2017. We did the phase 2 of that from Park Avenue to the railroad tracks. You notice we left out the railroad tracks, but when you get in there, there's a lot of street furniture in that very short 100-foot area across there too. But both projects, we made them to be very similar, to work together. We put in benches, trash cans. We used pavers to kind of give it a sense of place, and other street furniture. And I'm going to show you some examples of what we were able to do through that. One example is the photo here where we used the decorative lights and decorative traffic signals. And here's an example on the left. You can see we have a typical park bench. That's a heavy duty metal bench that's made to last and be useful. It meets all the requirements that we need it to. And also a trash can. The photo below that, just to show you what happens, we do get damage. That trash can has been hit. It needs to be maintained. We need to consider doing something about that to continue the clean look of our corridor. The picture on the right, you see another bench that was placed there by the city as part of our streetscape project, but you see more street furniture. You see where the business there behind it, they're using that bulb out area, and they put some seats out there with umbrellas. You can see they've got a sandwich board out there. They have the cafe tables out there, and what's that walkway, not the walkway zone, but the frontage or dooryard, but they've kept a very clear pedestrian walkway through there. And then we got some more opportunities here. We've got pedestrian lighting there on the left, along with wayfinding. A lot of people put signage as a very important part of a streetscape to help the pedestrian as well as motorists negotiate it successfully. And then in the middle, we got one of the most unique features in downtown Norman, and it's spreading throughout other corridors now, of our decorative bike racks. And behind that, you see more street furniture that was placed there by the businesses behind it. And then in the right picture, you can see it's the same pedestrian lighting, but we put banners on it. And you can also see in the two photos, the pavers that we placed there along the street to kind of give an edge treatment, to give it a sense of place, kind of that old style, the brick that used to be there for Main Street. So another way of creating place and using things to bring that out and give it a purpose. We also have decorative street lights. You can see those there on the left. And then you can see a couple examples of public art. The first one there, of course, is the scissor tail sculpture, a great looking piece of sculpture that changes throughout the day with the shadows. And also interesting, we've just completed our artful inlets, and here's an example of that. I think that's something that we can consider that makes that a truly unique corridor, because we do that in this corridor. And then in that top picture on the right, we did treatments in the intersections, again, to create a sense of place, something special, something different. Kind of a different way to look at it, the Main Street overpass. The theme on that was land run. And some of you may not know, but back many years ago, and I can't give you a date on it, there was a study, and they went through and they gave each of the overpasses in Norman a different theme. And the theme for Main Street overpass was land run. And we kept true to that. You can see and of course it's a very large, with that being the type of interchange that it is, we have a lot of room to work with. We're able to do these raised planters that could be used for seating, and a lot of great work there that we worked hard with ODOT to get this installed. And I think it's a great example of what you can do to help set a streetscape in Norman. We also have Jones Avenue, which is our legacy trail. I think this is another really, truly unique Norman item. And we're really looking at that area between Duffy Street and Acre Street. And there's a lot of, as you go through there, there's several installations of public art that had these placards with the history of Norman and these seating areas. And it's all about the history of Norman and teaching about that through a walking interpretive trail, which is really a neat idea. This is a very well thought out and very planned item throughout this corridor. And it was paid for mostly with private funds, which is also something that's very unique. So, you know, if anybody hasn't walked that, it's truly a unique corridor and worth going through. Just a couple of other examples right there in the same area. You can see we have trash cans, we have some walls that help to find it. And then in that picture on the right, going back to the signage idea, this is actually a small stop sign for the pedestrians and cyclists using that 10-foot legacy trail to let them know that they need to yield to the traffic, even though there is a crosswalk there. Another example that we have is Lindsay Street, and the theme for Lindsay Street was Cherokee Gothic. Of course, that ties in with the university, with that being the gateway to the university. And when that was under design, there was a lot of consideration to make that a future walkable corridor to give placemaking to this area. Of course, that's going to require some investment in the future from property owners to redevelop the property. The city actually spent a lot of time and effort. There were several meetings that we worked with the Institute for Quality Communities at OU with this too. They brought in Dan Burden from out of state to come in and discuss this and help us envision what it could be. There were several meetings, but we contracted with Gateway Consulting that could actually help property owners see plans, and they could help them lay that out. So you can see we went through a lot of effort there, but the whole idea was to move those buildings to the property line and park behind. So kind of what we were saying in the earlier slides about that's the typical time that you see a lot of really successful street furniture installations. But this project included benches, trash cans, bus shelters, landscaping, and we also did some bridge aesthetics. We came in again, you can see in the picture here where we did the decorative traffic signals. We also, you can see from this picture a little bit, we did some treatment in the intersections to make it unique. That picture farthest to the left, that's one of the benches. And you can see that we kind of made it mimic the columns on OU, and that's a trash can. Again, you can see a better photo there showing the intersections and the treatments in the intersections. And each one has a different center design, but you can see that by using colored concrete and stamping, we're able to give it that Cherokee Gothic feel. We also included very unique bus transit here. You can see those. Again, bringing those columns and making it look very unique and very stylized for this area. And then what maybe one of my favorite features of this entire corridor is the bridge over Hemhoff Creek with the large columns and the walls, just making it very unique and carrying on that theme as you carry on down to the University of Oklahoma. And just to show you how thoughtful and how much we went into this, that larger picture there on the left, that shows some of the landscaping we did through the center median, but that cut in the middle is actually for a future pedestrian walkway or mid-block crossing, as we call them, to make it, when it becomes more walkable, we can actually put a crosswalk in there. And those are designed very specifically where the pedestrian would get there, they'd have a place of refuge. And because of the way we've angled it, they're looking back at oncoming traffic to help them be aware of that oncoming traffic. So you can see how much thought went into what was done. The firm that did the work was Leidos. They had their own landscape architects who helped us with all this design. You can see there in the center photo, we did decorative lighting again. And if you look there near the top, you can see those two bars or rods that are folded kind of going along with it. Those are actually for banners, so that if the merchants along that corridor wanted to do banners, they're there and available. And then again, we did pedestrian lighting, that's lower lighting for just for pedestrian use to make this feel more like a walkable area. We also have the Lindsay Street interchange. That was the Cherokee Gothic theme. That's what was initially laid out to be. Not OU, but Cherokee Gothic. And a lot of work and effort went into this. Stephen Weitzman came in and helped us with this design, did a great job. You can see we coordinated with OU, ODOT. A lot of effort went into this, this area. You can see we got the large release of the seed sower. We have large planting beds with park benches on it. You can see we're able to do some arches like we see down on the campus. Some large signage there letting people know that they're entering Norman. It also says home of the University of Oklahoma on the other side. So you can see we're able to do a lot there with bridge aesthetics to make a sense of place for the whole community. We are looking at future projects to include streetscape, street furniture. The first one would be Porter Avenue Streetscape project, and this one is picked out to be Art Deco. I think we've done some initial planning on this, so what you're going to see is actually just renderings and what the design is going to incorporate. But it's the corridor from Robinson Street to Alameda Street, so just a little bit south of the corridor that we're going to be talking about in a few minutes. And this was also very designed. It's under design now with Cabinets Engineering and Laud Landscape Architects. And the photo you see there depicts some walls that we can use coming in there that would kind of let you know you're entering a special corridor that's planned, that's intentional. And you can see that there. I think it's a really great design. I'm really anxious to see how that is put forth in the plans and we're able to utilize that. We also have bus shelter here, very stylized with those leaning benches on it, so that will be there, something that makes it unique from other corridors in Norman. And then that other photo, it shows quite a few things there. You can see we've got increased landscaping to soften it a little bit from the buildings. You can see the base of the decorative light poles, and then in the background, the decorative light poles we'll be using. You can see we're going to be using that paving, that different paving along this the curve again, to kind of give a safe zone and also just to make it a little more stylized. So a lot of work's going into that. It's early in the design, but we're anxious to see how that's going to continue and how that will unfold. And I just went blank. My apologies.
No problem.
That is very uncharacteristic of PowerPoint.
Yeah, I just seem to go blind here.
Council, as we're waiting to see if the magic of PowerPoint returns, one of the conversations council had during the retreat was the establishment of some ward-specific funds established in the budget so council members could solve some ward-specific problems. We talked about that at our staff meeting yesterday. Mr. Francisco indicated that we used to have that program. So that's a thing that we know how to do. And potentially, if we come up with good policy as it relates to street furniture, that could be one of those tasks that council members could address if they had some ward specific, small project funding money to deal with sidewalk gaps or, needs and requests like this. So we know we do work better when we've got good policy behind us for sure.
Yeah, I agree completely. I would love to see some more discussion on that for sure.
Wow, it's back.
Well, I had to close it down. My PowerPoint actually completely crashed on me. I apologize. And it looks like it's doing it again.
Scott, you're frozen too.
Am I
Yeah.
still, do I still
Yeah.
have vocal?
Your
Council, what we could do is once this recovers, maybe Scott's computer will need a little CPR, but I would propose that we forward this presentation to you, and or we can have it printed for you and stuck in your mailbox if you'd like to see all that color in your hand. Either way, to allow council to take it all in, and then perhaps we could schedule a follow-up meeting at some point in the near future and talk about some policy parameters and how council may like to proceed.
Or Sean, could you pull it up on your computer and I can?
I'm doing that right now. Let me see if I can click and share.
It's under PowerPoint presentation, CPT, streetscape, or street furniture. I apologize. I don't know why my computer just chose this moment to.
I think they know when you need them, and that's when they do it.
Yeah. So we'll just go old school here, and I'll just ask Sean. It's up a little bit, Sean. I was on street furniture, slide number 20. Okay, and I'll speed up from here. I apologize, council members. Some other street furniture that we do have are bus stops, and these are provided and maintained by Tyler Media, and they sell the advertising on them. You see a couple of benches, and you can see one of our bus shelters. And these are well done, and we utilize those quite a bit. Next slide, please, Sean. So all of this stuff has to be maintained, and that's something that we're very mindful of as we're looking at this. So when you see that, you've got to think about the landscape maintenance. We're doing landscape beds. Street furniture needs maintenance. You're going to get somebody who's going to put graffiti on your bench, or the trash can that gets damaged and broken. You also have to remove the waste from those trash cans. So just to give you kind of an idea of some of the corridors and some things that we expend on the maintenance Main Street, when we're looking at those landscape beds and taking care of those, it's about $2,700 for the year. Lindsay Street, and this is just the landscaping on both these, is $3,900 a year. So you can see that they add up pretty quick. And this isn't even taking into account maintenance of that street furniture, if a bench needs to be replaced or anything like that. And we're still kind of negotiating the waste removal. It's different by corridor, and we're trying to get something set up more long-term, consistent on that. Next one, please. So what's been requested, and all this was just to get to this point, what's been requested is a park bench to be placed along the Porter Avenue between Rock Creek Road and Robinson Street. So this is that corridor. You can see Porter up north is to your left, Rock Creek Road of course to the north, and Robinson on the south. So we were kind of looking, next slide please, at possible locations. The east side of the road seems best because we have more room between the sidewalk and the curb to be able to accommodate it. And it kind of makes sense to do it at the halfway point. So the halfway point is approximately where the church is. And I've got that blue box there to kind of give you an idea of where we're talking about. So next slide, please. If we do put a bench in, we feel it's important. We can't just go to Lowe's and buy a bench and set it out there. It's not going to make it. So we feel it has to meet the ADA requirements of sections 305 and 903 of the ADA. It calls for it to be 42 inches long minimum. They also suggest it have arms so that you can push up if you need it, if you've like transferred from a walker to the bench. You can see there's depths. They recommend back support. And if you are going to have it, you have to have companion seating on one end that's 30 inch by 48 inches. And that's all has to be done on a solid surface. And that kind of falls in when you look at the next slide, please. So I've kind of zoomed in on where the church is and what the church, the aerial photo there of the church. And then I've zoomed in a little bit further here on the right, just north of that south drive, because that's the closest to Midway that we could get it. So what that would wind up looking like would be a 4-foot by 10-foot concrete pad. And we're recommending a 5-foot bench. That's what we have throughout town. It's fairly typical. And that would be set in there. You can see in this situation, we have a lot of room from the back of curb to the sidewalk. In other areas, including on the other side of the street, we didn't really have enough room. We would have had to get more right of way to be able to do that in the future. So this is what it would look like and what we would have to do to fit it in this area. So this is just a couple of photos just showing you the area. You've probably driven by it, but if you haven't really looked, it's hard to imagine. You can see it's just a big grass area, and it's going to be hot during the summer and no real protection. So next slide, please. So after we started looking this, after this request came in, we really wanted to dig in and find out what was required or what other communities were doing. We found out that this is not an Americans with Disabilities or an ADA request. We looked in the current rules. We couldn't find anything in either the rules or best practices that recommended this or discussed this. So we reached out to the U.S. Access Board, which helped us with this, and they answer questions from communities and businesses to help them with ADA accessibility and requirements. And they said there are no requirements to provide benches in this application. We reached out and looked at our fellow communities around us, and we couldn't find anybody that had any applications of this or any policies on this. I did internet searches, like every time I'd go back to San Francisco or Seattle or a heavily urban or downtown area, nothing suburban or more outlying like we have. And I even did a request on the American Public Works Association on kind of their get your question answered, and I got no responses other than, why would you do it here? It's not a heavily, trafficked area. This is more of a downtown question. So it's kind of, we didn't really find anything that we could go on as far as a policy to help us here. So some considerations that we had, this, like I said earlier, this bench must be durable and easy to maintain. We really feel if you're going to put a bench here, you probably ought to put a trash can so the people aren't throwing their Brahms cups or their McDonald's cups on the ground as they sit to rest. We kind of did a rough cost estimate. We spoke with our partners over here in Parks, and they said that the benches that they purchased that would meet these requirements are normally in the $1,500 range. We estimated $2,500 for a concrete pad, $300 for a trash can. So approximately $4,300 just to install this bench. And then nobody has a budget to do this at this point. And then the long-term maintenance cost, there's nowhere for that to fit if the bench were to be damaged because a car jumped the curb. It's become graffitied or whatever happens over time. Also, how will the church respond to this being placed in front of their location? They probably won't mind, but always something you have to consider. And then also, is the request justified on the number of complaints or the pedestrian volume? This really isn't a high volume corridor. So we feel that if we're going to move forward and start looking at these types of requests, that we need to establish a city policy for the placement of these street furniture outside of the special corridors, the main streets, the Lindsay streets, the Porter corridors. And we just kind of started throwing out some potential criteria. There needs to be an application. We have applications currently for traffic calming, parking restrictions on one side of a road. And so that leads us into this. So who would be able to apply? Who would be the applicant? Would it be the property owners? Would it be the individual who's requesting it? And then is it going to require consent of the property owner or property owners? In the traffic calming example, they have to petition the property owners along that area, and they have to have a certain percentage to agree to put it in, or it does not get moved forward. Do we need something like that here? We're gonna have to consider, is there right of way available to install it? Because if we have to go and start purchasing right of way, that of course is gonna drive up the cost. Is it pedestrian friendly or a walkable corridor? So does it make sense at this location? ADA compliance, and then also, is there a cost share? Are they going to help pay for it, or the business, whoever requested? So kind of considerations and next steps. If we move forward with this or with a program like this, who will be responsible for the capital and maintenance costs? Do we want street furniture in corridors that aren't designed for it? As we've discussed, all the other corridors we have it in were designed and planned and very intentional. And now we're kind of talking about just placing them in random locations. How would we address these future requests for any street furniture? And this is where the policy and application would come into play. And with that, how would the committee like for us to proceed with this and future applications? And with that, if there's any questions or comments.
Okay. Thank you, Scott. I appreciate the presentation. Let's see if we can go back to the gallery view, see everybody.
Yeah, Sean, unshare your screen.
All right. So let's see if Councilmember Foreman is on with us. She's not. Okay. So my thoughts on this particular case, and I would definitely like to get some feedback from Councilmember Foreman about it, but I would say if we were going to do it, definitely would want to talk to the Nazarene Church. That was definitely I drive by here pretty often, or at least once a week anyway, and I drove by yesterday and was looking, and this definitely seemed like the most ideal location. Maybe if we were going to do it a little bit south of that driveway on Porter, there's actually a tree on that property that maybe that might address the summertime heat issue and shelter. But if we were going to do it, I definitely would want to talk to them about it. Maybe they'd be interested in helping pay for it and maintain it even, who knows. Some of the, like this particular case, from what I understand, is a resident that lives in Section 8 housing complex that is around Rock Creek and Porter, and they're walking to the downtown area pretty often, and it's a little over a mile there. And so, maybe Councilmember Foreman or staff, if that complex, that the housing complex, if they might be interested in, your tenants are traveling this distance, maybe they might be interested in helping out with that cost if we were to do this as well. And then I would like to think about some criteria. Again, if we were going to do this type of thing outside of the corridors that we've talked about and areas where it kind of makes more sense to do this type of stuff on a regular basis, would be looking at factors like distance from Section 8 housing and public transit service. So, like Vicksburg on the east side, for example, has existing current bus transit service right out that goes by it every day. But in this case, we don't have a bus route. I don't know that goes that far north or even close to that far north. And so that might be one factor we'd look at, is to say, okay, is it a request within X amount of distance of Section 8 housing and in an area on a major corridor where we don't have a bus transit service currently? So wouldn't be something we would do anywhere, but maybe those factors could be something we would use to determine whether we should do it in circumstances like that. Because I agree with staff, I would not necessarily want to set a policy that we would do this anywhere, everywhere in the whole city. Just from a cost and maintenance wise, I think that would be prohibitive. But factors like low income, Section 8, people that don't have cars, and we don't have any bus service that goes there yet, would be things I'd want to look into. And then, yeah, if there's, if we can ever get to the point where we do have ward, small budgets for ward issues, and council member felt that this was something they wanted to use their ward budget to do, I guess if that's what they think is the most important thing to use it on, then that would be something I would be interested in pursuing further, as well, as I mentioned earlier. So those are some of the comments I had about this particular item. Are there any comments, questions from council that's on the call? Councilor Carter?
Three topics. One would be, there seems like a lot of headwinds to this location. Not to say that it's a no, but I agree with staff's concerns. It seems like, as I recall, we've had streetscape projects where we attacked the whole corridor. And if I remember right, we had state funding, or we had also some kind of funding, I think, on some of these corridors. And so, just looks like a lot of headwinds and opening up going down a slippery slope to just start cherry picking spots all over town. I think the list will be long. But secondly, I think Mr. Pyle comments, if we do end up with some ward specific options to look at, I would really appreciate staff's recommendations. If there's infrastructure, that's on the list of priorities in Ward 2, that'll be my biggest determining factor in what I would like to see, move forward. And then my third topic or comments were just about Lindsay Street in general. And, I drive down Lindsay Street every day, and just want to compliment staff, Mr. O'Leary and Mr. Sturts. It's remarkable, the transformation that street's gone through, the aesthetics, the forethought. I just can't give you enough compliments about that. And then Mr. Sturts' comments made me think, wonder, I guess, since now I'm back and have been a little out of the development or planning scene. I know we've got that intersection of Berry and Lindsay that's got a big vacant lot there. Mr. Castleberry's old office and around the corner. And then just wondered, about have the landowners along there reached out at all about, projects and seeing the vision that you guys had for that corridor?
There has been a development that has looked at that area, and they submitted some early plans. They were not necessarily following what the vision of the corridor was. We have tried to engage them and discuss that with them.
Am I the only one not hearing?
Yep, he's coming through on our side.
I heard him. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, we lose.
I'll just mention for the rest of the council, Scott's right, and Jane is with us too, but that the whole Lindsay Street redevelopment concept was the basis of really everything that we did. It was sort of that urban renewal concept, build it and they will come. So council spent a lot of time visioning what Lindsay Street can be. And we had hoped to see more movement, frankly, staff had, and it's just a very slow process. I believe it's going to happen. It may take 20 years before each of those landowners, redevelops their parcels. But I think it's slowly beginning. You can see the vacancies. Hate to see those vacancies, but that's the beginning of a redevelopment process. And hopefully, when they do come forward, they can meet some of those standards that we hope to promote in that corridor.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Any other comments, questions from council about
Thank
this? Don't see any others. Okay, since Councilmember Foreman's not with us, it's might be a little difficult to give total feedback on it, but I think I'm not a complete no, but I do would like to discuss further consideration of those factors I mentioned about the Section 8 housing, public transit, and maybe having some specific criteria that would, could create a pathway for this and not just allow it, open the door for it to be anywhere, everywhere. I'd love to be able to have a bench for people everywhere, but just a city this size with our resources, not really possible. But hopefully we can maybe find some partners, and Councilmember Foreman might be able to provide some additional feedback after viewing this meeting. Staff need anything else as far as that goes?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Very helpful.
Okay. All right. Then the last item on the agenda is miscellaneous discussion. Is there any miscellaneous item members of the committee would like to add, discuss, bring up? Don't see anything. Okay. Okay. I think that's it then. I will look forward to following up on some of these items next month or when next possible, and continue discussing these important items of community planning and transportation. Again, anybody interested in public transit numbers, data, ridership, all that stuff, be sure to tune in to this committee meeting every month, and we can give you all the data you could ever want about public transit, and we can ask your questions and get answers for you. So, okay, I think that's it for this month. I'll go ahead and adjourn this meeting. Thank you all, and have a good rest of the day.
Thank you.